Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you please find your seats, we'll go right to our cleanup. We do have one admin comment before I call up our next cadet to introduce our final speaker of the day. Due to a schedule with the Broadmoor, we are actually going to start tearing down the exhibit hall when we get started here. The doors in the back will be locked and closed, and we'll be actually exiting to my right over here through the main doors straight out after this presentation. So without any further ado, let me call Cadet 3rd Class Cade Leonard to the stage to introduce our final speaker.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cadet 3rd Class Cade Leonard. Lieutenant General Timothy Haugh is the commander of the 16th Air Force. Air Force's Cyber and Joint Forces Headquarters Cyber. General Haugh is responsible for 44,000 personnel, providing worldwide intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities, defending the Air Force portion of the Department of Defense Global Network, performing operational planning in support of the Air Force component and combatant commanders in the execution of offensive cyber operations. He also serves as the commander of the Service Cryptologic Component, where he is the Air Force's sole authority on the conduct of cryptologic activities. General Haugh commissioned in 1991 as a distinguished graduate of the ROTC program at Lehigh University. He has served in numerous cyber intelligence assignments and has commanded at the squadron, group, and wing levels. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lieutenant General Haugh.
Good morning, everybody. Really excited to be here today. Before I really dive into the presentation, first I want to thank Vanessa Johnson, Phil Parker, and Rich Genoso in terms of putting on a wonderful event. And what also made me really excited when we look at what was in this agenda is across this agenda, I saw teammates that we're working with every day in our service in a way that I'm incredibly proud to see, whether it's our acquisition community, it's our lead MAGCOM and Air Combat Command, the words that you've heard from Mr. Marion or from Trap Kennedy, from the SAF-CN and HAF A26 staff. It is an incredible partnership that we're seeing across our service to really advance in a number of areas. So today, what I'd really like to be able to talk about is go over a couple things that will break into parts. First is an overview of 16th Air Force, what we're doing, what we've been asked to do by our Secretary and by COMAC, what the intention is for 16th Air Force and what the expectations are. Then talk through a couple of the bigger initiative things that we're thinking about. In some cases, they're not going to yet be fully defined, but to let you know the areas where we want to spend some time, whether that be across our service, with our joint partners, or with industry to think through. And then finally, a couple of the initiatives that we're working with our combatant command partners. You heard from General Matos this morning. Clearly, we are very laser focused on where General Raymond is going, both as a service chief, as well as with standing up a new combat command, and we're going to be partnered with him, a combatant command. We are going to be partnered with him at all steps along the way, but we also want to talk a little bit about EUCOM, a very different view of what the joint fight looks like from a defensive perspective in our role with EUCOM. To just give you a sense of the type of things that we're working on in our various roles. And then finally, I want to talk about convergence. This is the area that we're really looking to charge every one of the airmen in 16th Air Force to be thinking about so that we start to build what does our doctrine look like, what are our practices, and really most importantly, how do we translate a concept of convergence that allows us to start producing outcomes on the battlefield today and tomorrow and the next day to meet the demands of the nation. So with that, we'll give you a quick overview of 16th Air Force. So when we were established in October, what we did is we took a previous cyber NAF and a previous ISR NAF, and we've taken the resources from those and we're creating a new organization, and that's 16th Air Force. The problem statement that we were given from the Secretary and from the Chief and from COMAC is across the top, which is we were individually doing some really good work in our ISR enterprise, how we do targeting, how we are executing cyberspace operations, offense, defense, as well as DODN operations. We also are one of the leaders in electronic warfare. And as we tried to reestablish our I/O capabilities, what we really were dealing with is stovepipes where we were refining ourselves within those stovepipes, but we were not integrating them successfully to be able to get the full outcome that we could achieve. So the core of our problem statement of 16th Air Force is to be able to integrate those disciplines in a way that we are able to get the maximum in support of each one of the outcomes we're trying to achieve, regardless of the role that we're in. And I'll walk through to give you some specific examples of that. The other key piece of that problem statement is across the conflict continuum. When you look at what we have all grown up with, if you've served for any time in any of the military services, we have been focused on the conflict portion of the continuum. Or we've been focused very heavily on the find, fix, finish portion of the work that we've done to combat terrorism. What we're being asked to do in the National Defense Strategy is to be able to move that focus in a much more balanced way to compete today against our adversaries as we look at intellectual property theft, as we look at disinformation, targeting of our elections. It's now a redefinition of what the role of the Department of Defense is to defend forward and engage in peacetime to be able to bring cost to adversaries that are attempting to combat some of our core things that we hold most dear. So that is the problem statement. The way we've focused our efforts is across our line of effort. So if you look on the far right, generating insights, compete now, and prepare for escalation, the foundation of all warfare is understanding your adversary. So when you look at what we're bringing to the table as 16th Air Force in support of all combatant commands and all air components is a large portion of that data that is going to be relevant for execution of every one of those other missions. We started at an incredible point for that, but generating insights is where we're going to be able to do the most work, where we can then begin to look at outcomes that will be in the information environment, cyber domain, electronic warfare, but also, if called upon, enable operations in the kinetic environment. The compete now emphasis, what can we do today? We've already found things that we were doing across our enterprise that we believe could produce outcomes today in support of combatant commands. In some cases, we've already proposed those to combatant commands. We hope some of those will bear fruit this week in terms of options we presented to combatant commands based off of unique collection that we've done across our ISR enterprise, and then translated that into information warfare products that would now be available to a COCOM to put pressure on an adversary. Finally, of course, we've got to be ready to prepare for escalation. If we're called upon by our nation, 16th Air Force is expected to be a part of that to generate, in particular, how we can do things in the non-kinetic environment and enable kinetic operations based off of the data that we can bring to the fight. We're talking across our force in terms of the language of the National Defense Strategy. So you see lethality, strengthening partnerships, and reform the DoD. For us, this is outcomes. How do you produce those outcomes across all domains? We have a big role to play there. Strengthening partnerships is a really interesting area for us. If you look traditionally across what the way we would normally structure a numbered Air Force, we wouldn't be called upon to do many different things in relation with international partners and interagency partners. For us, that is foundational work. For us to partner across the interagency, and this is really any element of the executive branch that we can help inform to be able to produce an outcome, that's a unique partnership that we're going to continue to grow and we're expected to grow. In terms of international partnerships, General Nakasone expects us to grow partnerships with our foreign partners so we can enable their defense, in essence imposing costs on our adversary through the security of their networks, but also to be able to grow their capability to respond if needed. That's a unique set of tasks. On the intelligence side, we are also building those type of partnerships through our military-to-military relationships so that we can also get access to information that will help us be more effective in targeting or producing an outcome. So it's a kind of a unique area for us to look at as to how we go forward as 16th Air Force. These are the missions that have been assigned to 16th Air Force. And this is really foundational for how we're approaching the problem of creating an integrated component that will be able to produce outcomes across all domains, but first being able to compete in the information environment. So if you walk through these, if you think of each one of these as an authority is also pretty helpful. And what data is derived from the role that we play. Because ultimately what we're going to talk about, and what General Kreider, of course, has been one of the leaders of thinking about across our services, a lot of this is data strategy. What does our data look like? Where is it going to reside? Do we have the compute power? Do we have the algorithms? Do we have the applications to take full advantage of the data that we have? That's where we're starting, which is we have access to some authorities and data that is unique within our service and within some of our combatant command partners. It's on us to make that data now relevant to the fight today and for what we're preparing for tomorrow. Key to that is the role that we play in partnership with the National Security Agency, 16th Air Force as the service cryptologic component. We are responsible for really ensuring across our service how we conduct signals intelligence missions. That gives us a great opportunity to gain access to unique data, but we have to ensure at every step we're compliant with the law and our values as to how we use that set of authorities. The next, from the defense intelligence component, this is really ensuring that our intelligence oversight practices across all of our missions are rock solid. And that's foundational, and that's one area where we're really working closely with Air Combat Command to organize ourselves specifically to meet that compliance expectation. We're a component numbered Air Force, so we have the role to present forces, make them ready, conduct stand eval, participate in exercises, ensure our force is ready for whatever the nation needs. This is very traditional in terms of that. The areas that are a little bit non-traditional are what we're doing across the presentation of Global ISR, our analytic force that is working problem sets in support of our air components, as well as our targeting enterprise are examples of some of the unique things. We run all of the Air Force's networks. We operate them, NIPR, SIPR, JWICs. General Holmes has told us to also prepare to take over the SAP networks at some point in the future, with the goal of us having a single wing in our Air Force that's really working that tradecraft. And we're entrusting Colonel Steve Anderson and that team to ensure that we're going to be able to apply the tradecraft and the lessons we're learning across the activities we're doing with our CIO, our CISO, as well as trying to improve the user experience, doing that across NIPR, SIPR, JWICs, and our SAP network simultaneously. And we're excited about what that's going to bring. We are also, on the purple side, we are the component to U.S. Cyber Command. And in that role, we are expected to also be responsive to a number of other COCOMs, which I'll show you on the next chart. But this is, from this perspective, we are the organization in the Air Force that presents forces and operates to do defense activities as well as offensive cyber. So when you start to stack all those authorities up, it does give us some unique opportunities in terms of capabilities, access to data, and that is one of the foundational thoughts of breaking down those stovepipes, is putting all of these authorities in one organization so we can think through very closely with all of the elements that we do oversight with to ensure that we've got the right, we're being compliant with our law, we're working within each of those authorities, but we're taking advantage of the opportunity to integrate. And what you see on the bottom are 4 missions that we do for every air component. We're responsible for providing a global weather picture through the 557th Weather Wing, an organization we gained in October. Really a cool organization that really handles a lot of data, makes assessments every day, also runs its own high-performance computing center. That sounds an awful lot like our ISR and our cyber units. And what we see in there are 200 cyber professionals that now we can also talk about how do we take care of that broader cyber force that we have across our civilian cadre to think about how we can now develop across a whole series of units that are in 16th Air Force. That's one of the talent management things we're going to continue to work really closely with ACC and with Mr. Marion's team. We also, in terms of warfighter communications, hopefully you got to stop by and see the 5th Combat Comm Group. They are out there. They are the representative here of our warfighter communications, our deployable combat comm. When the Chief of Staff talks about the ability to go to anywhere on the planet, set up a bare base, be able to establish initial command and control, be able to prepare for follow-on forces, and then see to the fight, he's talking about combat comm. We're excited they're part of our team, and they're going to lead us through that discussion of agile combat employment and really work really closely with ACC as we continue to advance their kit to meet the expectation in a way that is now starting to drastically change as to what we're expecting in terms of the scale of those deployments. Smaller, faster, and really with a more comprehensive capability. So we're excited where those airmen are going to lead us. We provide the mass of the globally integrated ISR to the joint fight. We do that through our flying wings as well as our analytic enterprise, both from a SIGINT standpoint as well as a DCGS. We're working really closely with General Holmes as to how we present that force. We are working with both General Brown and General Harigian to talk about problem-centric, and I'll go a little bit more into that as we go forward. The 363rd ISR Wing provides global targeting. They are the mass of the targeting resources that we have in the Department of Defense, and they are also really central to how we look at target systems analysis, how you would approach this fight from both a kinetic and a non-kinetic, and they are growing the capability to really help us move the ball forward in how we think about information warfare, how we integrate cyber more effectively from a precision perspective to enable I/O. And that is, when you put all that together, we have 44,000 airmen with unique roles and missions, and our task is now to realize the opportunity. But these are the assigned missions, very foundational for everything that we're trying to do. A different way to look at 16th Air Force, these are our 10 wings. When you look at the capacity and the roles and mission and the diversity, there are amazing strengths inside there. There are things inside these wings that only they can do, and they do it masterfully every day. The only critique I have of our wings is as they get so used to doing the exceptional, they just think it's normal. Right? There's incredible things happening every day to make every one of those individual discrete missions happen, and we have now just grown accustomed to airmen just being able to make that happen. Our airmen are exceptional. We're proud of them, and we got to see some of that yesterday, just pulling out of the stack of the 688 Cyberspace Wing. And the role that we have the 561st NOS running large segments of our Air Force network, and seeing young airmen talk about their confidence and their ability to make a change that ripples through our Air Force, that makes it more effective for a user on a given day. It makes something more secure. They're awesome airmen. We're thrilled to trust them with the keys to be able to drive that very, very important part of our mission. All of these roles, so as we look at how we're going to organize 16th Air Force, we do not intend to change any of the current constructs of the wings in terms of their roles and missions. General Holmes and I share a philosophy that's tied to Daniel Pink, which is we really want people to be great at what they do. So for now, what we're not talking about is mixing and matching capabilities across wings. We want each of these wings to be awesome at their mission. And we want to be able to look at those wing commanders and empower them to drive that mission, make change, move out as we go forward. So those are the wings that you see and all the missions that they're executing. The same 4 foundational components that support our entire Air Force and the joint fight across the global missions. What I'd like to focus on is the top of the chart. So if you look to the left, at the top are the 10 air components. So in our roles that we're providing, ISR, weather, the networks that are operating, we do that for every air component in the Air Force. So we have to ensure our close tie to every air component. And that is foundational. What General Holmes has told us, as we are the component to U.S. Cyber Command, that he is also grading 16th Air Force on our ability to be the greatest in the world in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance to enable every one of our air components' success every day. So that's a balance that we have to ensure as we build our organization to be able to support our air components, while also on the right side of the chart is to also be able to be an incredible cyber component to U.S. Cyber Command, and then also to be in general support of 4 additional combatant commands. So we are the lead for Cyber Command for U.S. EUCOM, U.S. STRATCOM, U.S. TRANSCOM, and now United States Space Command. So when you see the breadth of the number of 4-star commands that we are every day dealing with, it has really been exciting to see how much they're asking of 16th Air Force, but the opportunity for us to be able to take these roles and missions and connect them in ways we haven't connected them previously to now produce new outcomes. And I'll give you just a simple example. If you look on the chart, you'll see in terms of roles and missions that we have various elements that very naturally every day are looking at various air defense systems. So when we did the survey of what missions were assigned across the 178 squadrons of 16th Air Force, what we found was across these wings, 9 of them were working on air defense, and specifically one nation's air defense system. But each one was operating within their own tasking structure. Whoever had asked them to do the work, that's who they were responding to. The horizontal integration only occurred if action officers were able to recognize that. Our task is to build an organization that has horizontal awareness of everything we're doing so that we can connect those dots and allow each to be more effective. An example of that would be if we have a cyber unit assigned to work on air defense, it would be ideal if every element of the ISR enterprise that's working on that same problem is passing their knowledge to the cyber team. As the cyber team gets effectiveness and being able to produce, to be able to generate new insights, that comes back to our ISR enterprise to be more successful. So you would all say, of course we should be doing that. The challenge that we have and what we've got to work through very deliberately is at certain times, when you look at each of those wings, they're operating under a different set of authorities. And in many ways, we've structured them not to communicate laterally to ensure our compliance with every one of our laws and our values. So we have to be very deliberate in how we do that horizontal integration, but the opportunity space is amazing for us to be able to allow airmen to connect and then become even more effective as they go forward. So now the new component that is in this is what you see in the middle, which is our information warfare cell. This is the element that we have created to be our integrator to generate options that we can present either to combatant commands or for us to leverage. And realistically, when we present those options to combatant commands, we're going to do that through the air components. And then to enable our component to be able to produce information warfare outcomes. So our initial cadre that we have stood up is in support of our cyber mission, and it is a mix of disciplines between public affairs, information operations, cyber, EW, and ISR, and bringing those specialties together and giving them the broad guidance of this is the entity we would like to produce outcomes against, begin to look at how we can do that in the information environment and what we can propose also for things that are outside of our positive control. That element is going to be central to what we do in 16th Air Force. Our intent is to build those with Air Combat Command so that we can also resource them in support of every one of our air components. Our priority to do that is based off of what the National Defense Strategy says are priorities, and that's what the order we want to build them in. But the goal is to build an information warfare cell that we could leverage in support of an air component, but have it still tethered back to 16th Air Force so we can take advantage of our comparative advantage, which is our access to these unique set of authorities, the unique data that allows us to get after adversaries in ways we haven't done before. So that's the big picture of 16th Air Force. What I would like to do now is just talk a couple issues. And in some cases, these aren't things that we've got immediate solutions for, but things that are important to us. As we look across our enterprise, I'm focusing on our cyber talent management today, partly because that's where Congress has given us authorities. Congress has recognized that this is an area that we are certainly in direct competition, both across the government and with much of industry. And they've given us some unique levers that we can pull. We're working now with Mr. Marion's office, with General O'Brien as A26, with the Air Combat Command team to say which of those levers do we want to pull as a service. And that's an area we're going to be working really closely over the next few months as we're experimenting with some of these new authorities. We're partnering with the other services who are also using them. And we really want to be able to then come back with, for our service, which are the things that we should be emphasizing to ensure that we're recruiting the right talent and retaining the right talent across our enlisted, our officer, and our civilian workforce. There's a lot of opportunity for us there. The other discussion that we're having across the board at every level of the Air Force is how we're equipping our force. And in many respects, that's about how our networks, and what the user experience looks like is where we start from. And then the next piece of that is how we handle our data. So this is from, and both General Goldfein and General Holmes have talked about, our network is a retention issue. If you come to work every day and you leave frustrated because you weren't able to do your task because our network couldn't support you, that is an issue for us, not at our airmen's level that are running the network. It's for the leaders that are responsible for sure, and we're equipping that. Because I would tell you every day what I'm amazed with is I think our network today, in many respects, is like many of our weapons platforms. where we expect great airmen to take an aging platform and find a way to generate a sortie. That's what our airmen are doing on our network, is they are working every day to ensure if we haven't invested in certain components in our network, they're figuring it out, and they're making sure that we're able to meet that. We want to do better than that. And that's where our partnership with the SAF-CN team, with Air Force LCMC, who is right in the foxhole with us, to be able to advance this. And I'm excited for where we are based off the alignment we've got with Air Combat Command and our partners within the Pentagon and within acquisition, that I think we're going to be able to get after it. We started it with Enterprise as a Service. We've seen initial good results. Now we're going to have to, how do we be able to spread our understanding of the things that we're learning as we go through those risk reduction activities? How does it inform other things we go forward? We need to think through what our force structure is going to look like. So we now know what 16th Air Force is intended to do. What we wanted to do is also be able to inform the dialogue of what our future Air Force looks like, if we're intended to compete in the information environment, as well as the number of expectations for the role cyber will play and ISR will play in what we see future conflict looking like. We have to help inform that. In some cases, that's helping to bring data to the discussion. It's also for us to be able to help with modeling, and we want to be a partner across our service so that we can just make decisions that are informed by what will be the expectation for this unique force that has been asked to do competition in the information environment. Other areas that we think are critically important, both for retention and advancing cyber, as well as in some of our specific intelligence disciplines, are our local education initiatives and partnerships. First and foremost, we want at every location where we have airmen, we want the local schools to be the best in that area. That's the partnership we want with our communities. We want to talk about that. That is for us. We want to make the schools near us to be a retention item. That we don't want our airmen want to stay and be a part of those organizations because they love what they do, they know the purpose of what they're doing, and we're taking care of their families. We're going to have continued discussions about healthcare, and we're going to have discussions about education. The things we can be advocates for, the number one thing that we can do with every one of our bases is fight for the schools and getting resources into those schools that are commensurate with the commitment we've asked for every one of our service members and their families. In terms of university partnerships, how we build our pipelines, how we use some of these tools to bring in more and more talent directly out of universities, there's a lot of opportunity space there. We're working that one really closely across the Air Force. And then finally, one that I'm really excited about are clearances. If you've worked in any one of the NSA facilities at any time, the frustrations of having airmen that have been trained and then being outside the wire just waiting to get in, we've worked this really well across our service. General O'Brien started an initiative last year that worked with the recruiting service so that we would begin to do clearance paperwork that when individuals, before they left basic military training, they would already have their clearance process complete so that they could get their poly and get right to work. We are way ahead of the other services in that regard, and we're helping the other services in the lessons we've learned. Now we're working very closely with General Nakasoni's team to really track every one of our service members that are outside the wire, getting them on keyboard as fast as we can do it. And we've seen really good results. General Nakasoni's leadership has helped. The leadership across our service to engage on this issue is allowing us to put airmen to work when they show up on first day. These are just some examples for us as we're thinking about, because we'll spend all day talking about mission, but in reality, these are the things that we've got to invest our time as leaders to be focused on. Next is, I'm sure you've had, when you talked about the agile environment and the things that are going on in that space, in that forum, we're thinking about this a lot. And I'll show you a slide as to where we are today. But for us, we are clearly working with Dr. Roper's team, with Major General Schmidt's team to build partnerships in this space to allow us to move faster and to be able to be comfortable that we can do this across our force. 16th Air Force is unique in that we do have some unique authorities to do the rapid development activities that Congress has authorized. We also have our own tool developers. They are assigned parts of our force that we have built and we present. So how we partner with our teammates in the acquisition community are really an opportunity for us that's a little bit unique, and we have some awesome strengths there that we're going to be able to move forward faster. Data strategy is essential to everything that we're doing. So when you talk about those diverse missions, what that means is we do have a large number of data sets. Some of those conform really well to a future Air Force data strategy, others don't. We've got to prioritize those, continue to work those, but we're not going to be, we know we're going to be continuing to integrate more algorithms into our process, but it starts with our data strategy, our compute power, then the algorithms. But we have the vision, I think, now to start talking about what applications we need. And that's an opportunity for us to be focused in how we approach our data. And as we go forward, what's the right weight of effort? So as we partner with ACC, who's done a phenomenal job taking leadership as the lead MAGCOM, which things do they want LCMC to do, which things we're going to do within our fence line, those are areas that we're going to continue to tease out as to what's the right mix of that. But we're excited about where we're starting from. But we see opportunity, and one of the reasons is this. So this is all of the organizations across our Air Force that are in some way touching this innovation ecosystem. So you could look at this chart in a couple ways. I am an eternal optimist, so I look at this that we're starting with a lot more mass than I think we would give ourselves credit for. And now we can have a discussion about what's the best way to start to align ourselves to leverage the capacity we've invested in. If you see segments of it, you'll see Level Up. That's clearly one of the partnerships that we've got in 16th Air Force with Air Force LCMC as they work on unified platform, but also how that fits into the Air Force strategy for Platform 1. We're there with them, with developers inside that facility so that we can leverage their approach and also to be partnered throughout the process. So we see a future that we're likely, where ACC has now proposed, inside 16th Air Force, how do we organize to be successful with this? And what I would expect over the next 6 months will determine whether we actually have the mass to be starting to talk about having a group that is dedicated to this. And being then a clear partner to meet ACC's expectations on the organized, train, equip side, and in partner with LCMC so that we can operate at scale across a number of these areas. So you'll see more out of this. I am very optimistic based off of Dr. Roper's leadership and where we are with LCMC that we're going to start to see outcomes that are going to allow us to move a lot faster than we have in the past. I just want to mention weapons system cybersecurity. When we talk with General Nakasone, this is the area that he's asking us to put a lot of time and attention on as the cyber component. And this is in partnership with every one of the acquisition elements of our Air Force. We were fortunate enough over the last few weeks to talk to every PMO in the Air Force as we all work to remediate specific vulnerabilities that we were concerned about across the Air Force. We found out the exact number of PMOs that are out there, and we partnered with them to remediate. We certainly don't want that to be our conversation. We want to be talking about how do we think about this from the first time we write the first little bit of code all the way through the life cycle of the weapon system. The other part of this partnership, it will be with the National Security Agency. As NSA has established the Cybersecurity Directorate, it is an opportunity for us to have a clear partner that we leverage their expertise, their understanding of the threat, and that allows us to start thinking about how will we, internal to our service, use all the resources we have, from our CSSP to our cyber protection teams, to the build out of our mission defense teams, to anything else we can also do from a local perspective based off of unique capabilities. How we use all that we have is part of the art that I think we've got to be able to do in 16th Air Force to help synchronize that with a whole number of teammates as we go forward. All right, a couple things from combatant commands. So this just gives you a sense of where we are as a joint force. So as Air Force's cyber executing through the Joint Force Headquarters, our role with European Command, this is something we're working really hard on for General Walters. He is focused on the ability to demonstrate that as a nation we can deploy a large-scale ground combat maneuver force into Europe, and so he's doing that this spring and summer. It's called Defender Europe 2020, done in partnership with many of the nations within NATO. What our role is as the Joint Force Headquarters is to help him synchronize all of the associated defensive cyber maneuvers that need to occur with the movement of that force. So we're his cyber lead for that, and we're partnered with his Joint Cyber Center to be able to bring coherence to everything that's going on across our teammates in Cyber Command. whether it's Joint Force Headquarters Doden, whether it is our Army teammates that are going to deploy en masse in support of this to defend it, but also the work that we're going to do to defend specific portions of their network, as well as what is the information posture that we want to have throughout this exercise. So I think if you would have looked back 10 years ago, would we have been focused on a COCOM doing a major force maneuver inside of a different combatant command? That wasn't the way we were organized. But now that we have Cyber Command, how they've organized this, how they've aligned us specific combatant commands, we are ensuring that we meet General Walter's intent to be able to ensure that we're defending this exercise from a cyber perspective while he's able to demonstrate his key objectives of getting that maneuver force into the places he would like it to go. Next, just touching on cyber and space. It is incredible what General Raymond has been asked to do. We are excited to be the cyber component to U.S. Space Command, and we look forward to helping them both build out cyber as certainly a necessary component of everything they're going to do in space, but also how we help build the Space Force. We will move units from 16th Air Force into the Space Force to align them and give them some initial intelligence capacity. We will also ensure that they're able to maintain their cryptologic functions. There's a lot of synergy between the lessons we've learned in standing up United States Cyber Command as a combatant command, and we want to be able to work really closely with U.S. Space Command. They're not perfect analogies, but boy, they are going to overlap in big ways. We're excited to work with the entire team, whether it's the U.S. Space Command team, represented by General Matos this morning, or the U.S. Space Force, and all the things that General Whiting and team are doing to stand up a new service. It's an exciting time, and we're thrilled to be a part of it as we go forward. Lastly, this is the area that we want to spend some time thinking about, which is how do we converge on a target? The Army has looked at this in their MDO doctrine. They talk about convergence, which is getting data from any sensor to any C2 to enable any shooter. That's their approach to this. What we're trying to look at is we're looking at how can we make our data available across our force so that we can then leverage that to its max extent for whomever was asked for it. And so we'll show you, we'll talk a little bit more to bring more specifics to that. But as we transition our ISR enterprise to problem-centric, it gives us an opportunity to organize around the data that is important to that problem. And that brings some focus, because now we can look at what data do we have access to address that problem. We are unique in 16th Air Force that we have a global vantage point. Across the authorities that we have and the way that we approach mission, we can see across the globe, both global access to intelligence and data that allows us to meet the expectation and the missions that are assigned. Combining that access to data with unique authorities is part of what we're trying to create in 16th Air Force. And with an assumption that we're going to do that with interagency partners, COCOM partners, and our IC partners. And that is what will start to be able to allow us to compete in the information environment. Those unique things are part of our comparative advantage. The challenge we've given to our team is how do we converge on the target? How do we converge all of those things on our problem-centric approach to say, if this is the problem we're going to solve, how do we do that? What are the material things we need to do? What are the tactics we need to develop? What are the relationships we need to be successful? And then how do we begin to take advantage of those authorities to produce the outcomes and begin today? So that's, now we'll be ready for questions. As we stand up 16th Air Force as a new organization, our symbol is the Phoenix, and our motto is Rise Up. And what we've asked all of our empowered airmen to do is to deliver outcomes for the nation. As every airman in our numbered Air Force takes on this challenge, it's a challenge that we want to ensure that the Air Force has contributed to across the Joint Force for operations in the information environment. We're excited to take on the challenge. We'll take any questions.
Good morning, General Haugh. Having worked with you on the transformation of the DCGS Ops Center, I'm curious what your vision is for the 616th Ops Center.
So we'll stand up the 616th Ops Center on March 16th, and that's a pretty clever date. The intent is we'll take two Ops Centers, so 624th OC, 625th OC, And we will merge those into a new organization. The 6/16's primary role, we will have clear elements of that, which will be command and control. When you think of command and control traditionally, we'll have that. That will be really our cyber side. That will be normal command and control. They're assigned forces. We will give orders to them to conduct operations. And that will include our offensive cyber, our defensive cyber, as well as our network operations. That's a very traditional command and control. The task that we've given Colonel Weaver as the first commander is, I want you to now think about how to enable convergence, which is not traditional C2. So if we have a U-2 flying over the Black Sea and it's being tasked by USAFE to work on a specific problem, how do we know that? How do we ensure that we know that so that we can connect that unit to potentially one of our units that is working national SIGINT and connect that dot? Ideally, the way we would start that is, what we do not want is we do not want the 6/16th sending out a big spreadsheet to 178 squadrons and saying, please fill out what you're doing today. What we really need will be some sort of situational awareness that says, if we pull every ATO today, what have our flying units been tasked to do? That should be easily digestible and translatable into some form of output. Every risk to annex that has task and portion of our ISR force, we should be able to ingest that and translate that into what activities we've been tasked to do. We're going to generate the orders on the cyber side. What other tasks would we also need to ingest, whether those be from DODN, as they ask us to do things across our network, or if it's a problem we've been given from an air component or an order from Cyber Command, we should be able to ingest all that and maintain awareness across to be able to connect those dots to make those units more effective. That's their first task. How do we get situational awareness of what our units are doing across 16th Air Force? And then what is the operational art for us to integrate that with an information warfare cell that has now been tasked to produce outcomes? So they've got clear guidance, broad guidance, and we're asking Colonel Weaver and team to figure out. In some cases, we're going to need some material solutions to that. Thanks, Linda.
General, thank you very much for your comments. I'm Harry Radke from the Cohen Group, and very complex organization that you just described to us with lots of challenges. And I think I'm asking a question perhaps that might be on other people's minds in this assembly today, but it has to do with how will 16th Air Force procure innovative technologies in the future with all your new reach and activity, and then all that's going on in the various domains today with realignments and reorganizations and all. How will procurement be handled by 16th Air Force?
So I think this is going to be pretty straightforward, which is the organized, train, and equip for cyberspace is Air Combat Command. So what I would like us to be is the greatest operational unit on the planet when you talk about information warfare. And we want Air Combat Command to be the greatest lead MAGCOM in this domain that we could ask for. And we want HAF and SAF to work policy. And we want to be clear in what our expectations are. Because I think from our standpoint, you just saw all the roles and missions we have. We have more than enough work to do to be focused on executing operations every day and taking care of our airmen, that we want to rely on our higher headquarters to carry the ball and organize, train, and equip so that they can be looking over the ridge line. We want to inform it. We want to be part of it. But what we really want is to do exactly what General Holmes intends, is to take leadership, which Air Combat Command has done. We just got to keep scaling. And then we have to determine, I think the area in the future, sir, that we're going to really need to think about is how do we ingest it? Because how we do that is really the challenge we certainly have opportunities with a lot of technology. It's about how do we talk about the risk and the opportunity in ways that we put the risk at the right level. Because there are a lot of things right now that I look at Colonel Steve Anderson as the person closest to our networks every day. He understands the risk involved. I want to empower Canyon to make decisions. Likewise, I would like I would like General Holmes to empower me for certain things that we could allow us to move quickly where it's prudent and where the timelines demand. So if we're defending the elections of our nation, we should be willing to take some risk. If it's something we're looking at that we have to put on the shelf to be able to support a no plan, then we can probably be more deliberate in how we approach it. But the things we're seeing from the leadership of our service are putting in a good spot. How we're looking at approving ATOs now today, that we're excited about that. That takes away, that's changed the focus on talking about risk as opposed to are we hitting every part of that checklist in exactly a very prescriptive manner but missing the essence of it. We're not focused on the right thing with that. How do we look at, when we do DevOps, where does the appropriate level of risk based off of the size of code we're going to release? Those are the conversations we need to really start. But and roles and responsibilities are absolutely clear as to who's going to do what in the procurement phase. How we operationalize it, I think we've got work to do yet.
Good morning, General. I'm Colonel Jen Lavati, 435th ACOMG. I love the integrated information warfare strategy, and I wanted to pull the thread on warfighting communications for a minute. Given the imperatives of JADC2 and ACE, I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on maybe the future employment of combat comm forces and how we might deliver non-kinetic effects at the tactical edge.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think when we look at agile combat employment, it really means there is work to do in procurement in this section, right? The kit that is currently of what we're using every day for combat comm wasn't built for the agility that we're now expecting of them. So we're going to work, I think that's an area that we're clearly going to work with General Radige's team at ACC, and they're being aggressive on that. So I think that's one. As we look at JADC2, what I'm really focused on from our standpoint is thinking about what data has to be available at what time. Today, we don't necessarily, within all the various minerals and missions, have a complete understanding of where our data is, what the condition of it is, its ability to really run analytics against it. Those are areas we're working really closely with SAF and with ACC to think about our data strategy. Because ultimately, for all domain command and control, it's what information needs to be in what either weapon system or individual's hands at the right time. And right now, we can very clearly see the vision of where we're headed. What we're thinking about is when we exercise things like the Global Integrated Exercise, and we're making assumptions that our adversaries are looking at some of our comparative advantages, and those are in cyber and space. So as we think about what JADC2 looks like to enable the initial phase of a cyber and space environment, that looks very different than a geographic fight and over a specific set of objectives set by an adversary. So those are things I think we've got to tease out. And I think both from Space Command, Cyber Command, U.S. Space Force, and 16th Air Force, we need to continue to challenge how we look at JADC2 through the lens of the global fight. Because we're going to be there for every combatant command in that. We can bring a perspective back in there that helps us think through the data that we'll inject into it, and then also, what does it look like in that very constrained environment when we think about the tradecraft of running a network to make the right data available? When we think the terrestrial mapping to what a network would look like in a geographic fight, we've got to think that through as well, both in support of space and as well what data has to move if that bandwidth gets limited. So there's a lot of goo in there, Jen, but I think the thought is one of the reasons that what we're expecting out of the 17-Delta career field is to lead us through that. To where in the past we ask a lot, we thought of it as a support career field. Our Air Force has clearly said 17 Deltas are operators in our Air Force, and we need the 17 Delta portion of our cyber force to develop the tactics to fully maximize whatever kit we've got on the battlefield for the environment we're going to operate in. And I think that's exciting for what we can help contribute in 16th Air Force. Okay, so to close, again, thank you to the AFCEA team. This has been a wonderful event. Really excited to see where we're going to go as a collective team. Like I see across the audience, we have joint partners, we have as well, some of our interagency, our other service partners. But what I'm also excited about is when you see the faces that were on the stage and know that we're all have unity of effort towards our outcomes, I'm really excited what that's going to mean for our airmen in terms of what we give them in terms of capability, what we give them in terms of where they fit in the importance of their role every day to enable the success of our service, our joint teammates, and our interagency partners. We're in a good spot. And as 16th Air Force, we want to help be a major part of how our Air Force thinks about what warfighting is going to look like in the future. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
General, on behalf of the chapter, I'd just like to thank you for taking time to be with us today, especially given all the things that are on your plate. We really appreciate you making time for us and delivering such an outstanding cleanup speech for us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Rich.
Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'd like to call our chapter president, Vanessa Johnson, back to the podium to make a few closing remarks.
Thanks, Rich. All right, I know you guys are all getting ready to get out of here, so I'll make this brief. I have a couple of thank yous. As the General just said, we had a pretty stellar lineup of speakers and panelists this week, so I want to thank all of them for attending and being with us and being willing to take time out of their schedules to be here and talk to us. I want to thank Deloitte. You know, the CTF, the Capture the Flag event was phenomenal as always, and those young guys and girls out there really enjoy participating in that, and that's our future, right? So I want to thank them for that and being the presenting sponsor. Thanks to all of our sponsors and exhibitors for being here. We couldn't do it without all of you. Thanks again to the Broadmoor, you know, world-class event in a world-class setting. We couldn't do this without this, this fantastic event, so gotta love that. Thanks to all the attendees. Again, you guys come out of your way to be here this week, to participate, to talk to vendors, to listen to all the speakers on the stage, so thank you for being here. Just a couple of stats. We had 2,018 attendees this week. 129 exhibitors, 25 sponsors, all of the fantastic speakers. I think there were 35 speakers in all. And we couldn't do this without the people that make this whole thing happen. And Phil's gonna come up here with his team here in a second, but 17 volunteers on the committee for RMCS, and the planning for this starts pretty much tomorrow for next year. And we have 95 other volunteers that help us throughout the week, checking people in, you know, running around with microphones, doing all that kind of stuff. This is truly a volunteer event. We couldn't do it without the group that we do it with. And I'm gonna bring Phil back up on the stage, and he's going to introduce all of those folks. We're gonna take one quick picture, and then we'll get you all out of here.
Again, as Vanessa mentioned, we can't do this without a lot of stuff happening in the background. Just want to bring the team up here just to get a quick round of applause when they get on the stage for them, quick introductions, and again, just echo the thanks that Vanessa had mentioned. It's because of you that we're able to do this and that we want to do this because we feel this is a viable, important, just required forum to get this information out, and looking forward to the partnerships in the future. So real quick, you've been hearing the man behind the microphone all week, Rich Genoso over there doing programs for us. Joan Janob has been doing social media, advertising, marketing, lots of stuff for us this year. Ellis Connolly is the exhibitor POC, Jim Appleyard, sponsorships. Mike Porach did the training stuff for us and coordinated the Tech Talks this year again. So Vicky Gamer did registration. She was one of our heavies, making sure you guys paid for what you signed up for. Mike Clark, just logistics. We call it logistics, but he's basically the guy that just, hey, did you think about this? I got to do this. And then he does 100 other things that we're not even thinking about. So Wanda Williams was supposed to just do the volunteers, but got thrusted back into the security role again for us this year, along with Martin Oliver, helped out quite a bit with the volunteers as well. our other two heavies, Sharon and Debbie back there, making sure that the DVs are taken care of upstairs and making sure that nobody else gets in there. Dennis Knoop, he's our NORAD Northcom POC liaison, helps us out with anything in the building. And the last three ladies on the end there, did I miss? Let me mention Russ Fellers as well. He had to take off, but he did a lot of the student liaison and the student teacher grant recognition, that kind of stuff. Jerry Roush, can't do it without Jerry. She has been with us quite a while, and she's the quiet one in the background that makes everything happen. Just can't do it without you, Jerry, so thank you. And Miss Bridget and Tammy, our Broadmoor POCs, wonderful. So again, thank you all. Get a quick round of applause for our committee here.
And Phil Parker, who ran this entire event, so.
Yep. So, another plug, February 2 through 4, 2021. We'll see you then. Like Vanessa said, we have lots of good ideas for next year, and planning starts now. Thank you.